Matthew 17:19. Then the disciples coming. The disciples wonder that the power which they once possessed has been taken from them, but they had lost it by their own fault. Christ therefore attributes this want of ability to their unbelief, and repeats and illustrates more largely the statement which he had previously made, that nothing is impossible to faith. It is a hyperbolical mode of expression, no doubt, when he declares that faith removes trees and mountains, but the meaning amounts to this, that God will never forsake us, if we keep the door open for receiving His grace. He does not mean that God will give us everything that we may mention, or that may strike our minds at random. On the contrary, as nothing is more at variance with faith than the foolish and irregular desires of our flesh, it follows that those in whom faith reigns do not desire everything without discrimination, but only that which the Lord promises to give. Let us therefore maintain such moderation as to desire nothing beyond what He has promised to us, and to confine our prayers within that rule which He has laid down. But it may be objected, that the disciples did not know whether or not the Lord was pleased to cure the lunatic. It is easy to reply, that it was their own fault if they did not know, for Christ is now speaking expressly about special faith, which had its secret instincts, as the circumstances of the case required. And this is the faith of which Paul speaks, 1 Corinthians 12:9. How then came it that the apostles were deprived of the power of the Spirit, which they had formerly exercised in working miracles, but because they had quenched it by their indolence? But what Christ said about special faith, in reference to this particular event, may be extended to the common faith of the whole Church. 21. From a child. Hence we infer that this punishment was not inflicted on account of the sins of the individual, but was a secret judgment of God. True indeed, even infants, as soon as they have come out of the womb, are not innocent in the sight of God, or free from guilt, but God's chastisements have sometimes hidden causes, and are intended to try our obedience. We do not render to God the honor which is due to Him, unless with reverence and modesty we adore His justice, when it is concealed from us. Whoever wishes to obtain more full information on this point, may consult my commentary on these words, neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, John 9:3. 22. If thou canst do anything, have compassion on us, and help us. We see how little honor he renders to Christ, for, supposing him to be some prophet, whose power was limited, he approaches to him with hesitation. On the other hand, the first foundation of faith is, to embrace the boundless power of God, and the first step to prayer is, to raise it above all opposition by the firm belief that our prayers are not in vain. As this man did not suppose Christ to be at all different from other men, his false opinion is corrected, for our faith must be so formed as to be capable and prepared for receiving the desired favor. In his reply Christ does not administer a direct reproof, but indirectly reminding the man of what he had said amiss, points out to him his fault, and informs him how a remedy may be obtained. 23. If thou canst believe. You ask me, says he, to aid you as far as I can, but you will find in me an inexhaustible fountain of power, provided that the faith which you bring be sufficiently large. Hence may be learned a useful doctrine, which will apply equally to all of us, that it is not the Lord that prevents His benefits from flowing to us in large abundance, but that it must be attributed to the narrowness of our faith, that it comes to us only in drops, and that frequently we do not feel even a drop, because unbelief shuts up our heart. It is an idle exercise of ingenuity to prove Christ's meaning to be, that a man can believe of himself, for nothing more was intended than to throw back on men the blame of their poverty, whenever they disparage the power of God by their unbelief. All things are possible to him that believeth. Christ undoubtedly intended to teach that the fullness of all blessings has been given to us by the Father, and that every kind of assistance must be expected from Him alone in the same manner as we expect it from the hand of God. Only exercise, says he, a firm belief, and you will obtain. In what manner faith obtains anything for us we shall immediately see. 24. Lord, I believe. He declares that he believes, and yet acknowledges himself to have unbelief. These two statements may appear to contradict each other, but there is none of us that does not experience both of them in himself. As our faith is never perfect, it follows that we are partly unbelievers, but God forgives us, and exercises such forbearance towards us, as to reckon us believers on account of a small portion of faith. It is our duty, in the meantime, carefully to shake off the remains of infidelity which adhere to us, to strive against them, and to pray to God to correct them, and, as often as we are engaged in this conflict, to fly to Him for aid. If we duly inquire what portion has been bestowed on each, it will evidently appear that there are very few who are eminent in faith, few who have a moderate portion, and very many who have but a small measure.